John and Sarah are a happily married couple excited to bring their baby into this world. Sarah is a mathematician investing her time in teaching and the hobby of playing piano. John is an architect who coincidentally works with his ex, Alyssa, who is practically obsessed with him. However, their lives shift from happy to depressed when on a busy day for John, Sarah experiences an excruciating pain in her abdomen, leading to the miscarriage of their baby. After many sleepless nights, Sarah requests John that she cannot live in the house where they prepared to welcome a baby, to which her husband is very understanding. Their hunt for houses is very long because they are unable to find a house that feels like they can form a home and start fresh there. However, when their real estate advisor suggests them a big house on the outskirts of town, owned by a guy named Emmett, they decide to pay a visit. The house is close to perfection, just in terms of the location and the exterior beauty. And when Emmett takes them inside, nothing in the house disappoints. Even though it was originally built in 1918, Emmett renovated it perfectly to fit modern-day designs, yet keep the vintage aesthetics alive. He tells them he believes in connecting with his clients to see if he wants to bid them an offer or not, and requests them to stay for some drinks. Seeing the beautiful house that does feel like home to them, the couple decides to stay. Emmett is good at communication, but still doesn't pry more than them, saying they are leaving a story behind to start a new one. There are a few weapons, tools, and remnants set out on a shelf in the lounge. Emmett told them it was discovered when he was renovating the house, and he wanted to keep the story and the history of the house alive, so he decided to turn it into a showcase. Instead of talking about finances, Emmett questions them if the house will make them happy if they get it. Sarah tells him it isn't the house that makes one happy, but a home. Emmett is impressed by her answer, and later tells them when his wife was there, this was a home to him too, but now it's just a house. Since they have had a few noticeable drinks, Emmett suggests they should stay the night. For the first time since miscarriage, the two of them have a happy and peaceful sleep, making them excited to pitch an offer for this house the next day. However, the next morning, Emmett is nowhere to be found, and all they find are 3 pieces of paper lying in the dining with a pen beside them. One of them is the letter of Emmett stating he likes the couple, and they have a long life of experiences ahead of them, which is why he is willing to pass them the entire house as it is, without any price except for one condition. They won't be opening the cellar door at any cost. The moment they violate the condition, Emmett would take the house back from them. Sarah is willing to agree to this, but John is rational about it, highlighting how suspicious this entire scenario is. Who'd give away such a huge house that is fully furnished without any money? He also suspects something dark lying beneath that cellar door, but Sarah is only interested in starting a new life here. She mentions how this was the first time they slept in months, and if they take up this offer, they can use the savings for another attempt at IVF. For the sake of his wife, John decides to put his suspicions aside and sign the agreement for the house. After they settle in, they decide to throw a housewarming party. Alyssa also joins the party as a +1 to someone, even though she isn't invited, and brings in Jasmine for them. John meets her alone in the kitchen, questioning why she came here and telling her things are over between them, hinting this isn't just about their relationship before marriage, but a case of extramarital affair. They are interrupted as John is hurriedly called outside. People can see a man in a disheveled state standing outside the house with a bottle of petrol. John goes to him, questioning who he is. The man, who looks dazed, apologizes to him and leaves after telling him he needs to burn this thing down before it is too late. John is confused and concerned by this random incident, but tells everyone it is all good now. The next day, Sarah meets her neighbor, Catherine, who tells her casually that she hopes they stick around, unlike the previous residents. Sarah ignores the confusing statement. John enters his office and gets to know Alyssa filed a case of sexual harassment against him, and he is temporarily suspended from the job. His friend consoles him that he will be proven innocent, but John is worried about explaining the scenario to Sarah. A clear case of blowing an incident out of proportion because he is guilty of something. Coming back home, he gets to know Sarah is resuming her job, so he decides to not tell her for the time being. He is outside when he notices the cellar door and how all his office friends are curious about what's behind the door and even cornered him. They know he wants to know too. The next days, John spends his time at home or running through the tracks, while Sarah thinks he has been going to work after her. After 2 weeks, John has started to get restless and wants to talk to Alyssa, but his friend tells him not to meet her as this could be used against him. He thinks about texting Alyssa nevertheless, but then stops and focuses on the other thing making him so restless, the cellar door. He tries opening it, breaking the lock of the door, but it is of no use. At the dinner table, Sarah notices his troubled expressions and questions what is bothering him. John mentions that they can look into the cellar and Emmett will never even know, but Sarah convinces him not to throw away their improved lives just for the sake of his curiosity. The next day, John is still getting restless, so he decides to seek the architectural map of the house. The person finds it right away, telling him he found it for some Paul last year, but the guy never showed up to collect it. John then mentions Emmett, to which the person tells him that they never heard from Emmett since 25 years after his wife left him in the middle of the night with their daughter. Going back home, John finds another route to the cellar from under the stairway. As he opens the wood boards to find the way, he manages to create a hole in the cellar, but then has to come out as Sarah is back. That night, Alyssa finally responds to John's text, which he ends up doing. She agrees to meet him in their usual spot in a parking lot the next day at 2. Meeting her, he tells her to take back the allegations and that everything is over between them. Alyssa doesn't believe so, as he leads her on by telling her he loves her, having an affair with her during his so-called happy marriage, and constantly getting her hopes up about wishing for a family with her. John, being a pathetic loser, tells her he is never going to leave Sarah for her. Alyssa leaves, not concluding on taking back the case against him for obvious reasons. The next day, Sarah is taping the nursery to paint it, manifesting that it'll help her get pregnant while John goes for a run again. Her manifestation seems to work pretty fast as she feels nauseous, does a pregnancy test, and finds out she is expecting. When she gets up from her bed excitedly, the strip falls from her hand. Grabbing it from under the bed, she finds a rolled-up chart underneath. She feels mad at John after seeing it is the structure of the house. She decides to dig through what he has been up to and goes into the spandrel. As she is looking in, Alyssa decides to visit the house. Sarah comes out to get a torch while Alyssa enters the house. While looking for her, Alyssa goes upstairs while Sarah comes back and goes in the spandrel again. Looking for her, Alyssa ends up coming across the positive pregnancy test and the nursery Sarah has been setting up. On the other hand, Sarah finds the hole in the wall and her annoyance knows no bounds. When she comes out, she sees the front door swinging in the air, showing it was opened. John is out in his car venting to his friend about meeting Alyssa, but not reaching anywhere when he sees her car leave his house. He decides to follow the speeding car but is unable to catch up with it. Coming back home 4 hours after he left, he finds Sarah sitting on the couch looking pained. She asks why it took him 4 hours out jogging, but he questions if she is okay. She tells him she is pregnant, making him happy. However, she also confronts him about the cellar scenario. She eventually convinces him not to dig further into it for the sake of their expected child, and makes him nail the wood panels back in the spandrel to close off the scenario once and for all. The next day, they start planning on designing the nursery again when John receives a call that he has been cleared of the accusation and can come back to the office. Going back, he gets to know Alyssa just emailed about taking some time off for self-care and hasn't been responding to calls ever since. Later, John and Sarah are painting the walls when John removes the painting and finds a hole in the wall with something in it. Getting it out, he realizes it is a bullet, which is a pretty major concern for him. It is pretty human of him to worry about this, but Sarah still doesn't want him to dig into this situation or jump to any conclusions. John explains the entire scenario of people not even seeing Emmett in years. She questions if he thinks they are sitting over the dead bodies of his wife and daughter, to which John says it could be possible. She tells him the police must have investigated any such scenario, so he should not stress her out in this phase of hers anymore. In further days, John gets to know Alyssa's car was found abandoned somewhere upstate, hinting towards her committing suicide. On the other hand, Sarah finally goes out for a drink with her neighbor. Catherine talks about the previous neighbors leaving spontaneously without proper reasonings, speculating issues in marriage, but then moves on to mention meeting John every day on the trail while running. This is a shock for Sarah, as she doesn't know John has been working from home, but her shock shifts to seeing news about missing Alyssa being run on the news. At the dinner table, she asks John about it, who tells her they had got to know at the office too and hope she is fine. Later, Sarah looks through John's laptop and finds the email about his temporary suspension. She then looks through his phone to see his text about wanting to meet Alyssa. On the other hand, John still cannot get the bullet out of his mind and decides to look at the stuff in the showcase. In a box, he finds some more bullets and realizes it's the same. He shows this concern to Sarah, but she seems too delusional to see any of this as a concern. John tells her they should look, but Sarah is still not risking losing the house. Their argument is interrupted by someone at the door. 2 detectives are at the door wanting to ask John some questions regarding Alyssa's disappearance. They request to question him alone, but Sarah eavesdrops from the outside. John is initially questioned about the case she filed against him, followed by the call record showing they talked late at night, and then met the next day, as he wanted her to take back on the accusation, but it didn't work out. John then explains he went for a run and was home after on the day Alyssa disappeared, but the detectives require proof of that. Sarah interjects as an alibi that they were painting the nursery as she just found out she was expecting. This sums up their questions with John so far, so they leave, but John knows things are about to get messy with Sarah. She confronts him about his lies about the job, but discloses that it isn't the only lie he has spoken to her. She opens up about knowing he had been sleeping with her throughout their journey, as he smelled like sex and jasmine after coming back from their engagement party, which Sarah had to leave early from. She also knew he was with her the day they lost their baby, and even if it wasn't harassment, he still did cheat on Sarah. She tells him she protected him for the sake of their baby, and whether she thinks he is guilty or not doesn't matter because many people think he killed Alyssa. For some reason, all these troubled thoughts still take John towards the cellar door mystery. He decides to search for the previous resident, Paul, and goes to meet him. It turns out to be the same guy who came on the day of their housewarming party with petrol. Paul is going through a divorce and decides to tell him that the house is a kind of a trap. It lures you with its perfection first, but then slowly life starts eating you away. John thinks he is talking about the house, but Paul mentions what taunts them are the secrets they hide, and not what the house carries. It seems like for Paul, the cellar door and what it holds is a metaphor for the locked door in your life where you bury all your secrets. They start taunting and mocking them until they result in broken stuff like his marriage. Paul keeps telling him it has never been about Emmett, and the biggest regret for Paul was not opening the cellar door to see the truth within himself at the expense of breaking the contract. On the other hand, Sarah seems to be coping by focusing on painting the nursery as if nothing happened in their lives. Going back, John apologizes to Sarah, but she doesn't seem to care as she has decided to protect to secure the life they've always dreamt of. He calls this house a cage and decides he is going to open the door. However, when he tries to do it, Sarah slams his head, knocking him out of consciousness. When he wakes up, she gives him tea and then decides to serve him the other tea, telling him to be prepared for what he'll find once he opens the door. She pulls out a phone from her pocket and puts it in front of him. The phone belongs to Alyssa. She starts narrating that seeing the door ajar that day, she took a gun from the showcase and decided to look for the intruder. She found Alyssa in the nursery. When she saw her, Alyssa told her this entire life and John was supposed to belong to him, and it was about to jump at her when Sarah ended up shooting her multiple times in panic. While Alyssa begged for help, Sarah decided to choke her to death, wanting to save herself. She then wrapped her in plastic, threw her body in the place John dug for the spandrel, and then took her car out, abandoning it at a shady place far away. She posted a few pictures from her phone, sent an email to the company, and then threw away the phone. After that, she just burnt the clothes she wore that day. It was only that one bullet that went through the painting that served as a trigger, leading to the current event of her revealing the truth to John. John gets up telling her he will hire a really good lawyer for her, but she points the gun at him, telling him not to do that and sit. She explains how she can easily frame him about all this, provided the case Alyssa filed against him, their history, their texts, and the fact that he nailed the wood boards to where the body is hidden. She will say that she found the truth after the police came to the house and confronted him, and when he decided to attack her, she had no choice but to shoot him in self-defense. So he'll be gone too, while she will raise her baby alone in their dream house. She puts forward the option to choose for John on either dying or saying nothing and living their dream life with her. John decides to choose the latter for obvious reasons, but his discomfort can be seen on his everyday after. When they throw the baby shower, Sarah happily greets everyone while John looks troubled at the information he is being forced to keep in his head. As they go to see a gift on the piano, she tells him to act happy. However, on the piano is a box with a note from Emmett, congratulating them on turning this house into a home by starting a family after facing multiple challenges. He gifts them the key to the cellar door, mentioning that he already speculates what it holds. Placing the key on the piano, the two go for photos where Sarah looks happy and unbothered, while John's expressions show the secrets he'll have to spend his life with.